Weather's nice today. How about them Red Sox? How was your week 10? Oh, you know, I survived. Do you have family here for graduation? Yeah, me too. Hi, Mom. Oh, there she is. Have you ever noticed the things that people talk about when they're nervous? Or when they're talking to people that they don't know very well? I'm not sure if you could tell, but I'm a little nervous. This is a little bit new for me, talking to so many people at once, many of whom are complete strangers. In the past 4 years, I've become used to speaking in front of a different kind of audience, a classroom, full of people I know. Either know well or know of, but know nonetheless. Don't get me wrong, it's not that everyone at COA is best friends. However, we tend to communicate well and maintain relationships. And all of that starts from the smallest of interactions, the smallest of talk. There are many people on this campus who I have never spoken with apart from some passing small talk. We smile at each other on the paths or catch each other's eye in tab or the library, exchange a few words about the weather, and that's enough to feel a connection, some kind of bond or commonality. This should be a little bit easier for me. You see, I'm one of those people who likes to talk to strangers on airplanes. I didn't realize that this was such a contentious issue until a few years ago, when I was telling a professor about a really great conversation that I had on a flight to a conference. When I had finished telling him excitedly about this cool electrician that I had met, he just looked at me and said, "Oh, you're one of those people." And he's right, I am. I really like talking to people on airplanes. I'm definitely one of those people. But if you think about it, it's the perfect opportunity. When else do you have a completely new, completely unique stranger trapped next to you in a small, boring space for hours on end? Why not make the best of it and make conversation? I've had some of the most interesting endeavors in trying to explain human ecology on airplanes. You should try it sometime, really. But maybe reserve that particular conversation for a lengthy flight. Think transatlantic. As you've probably guessed, I'm a huge believer in small talk. I feel like small talk gets a bad rap. It's seen as rudimentary, unimportant, vacuous, boring, something you do with people that you don't know and never will. But I think it's much more than that. Small talk is used to pass time, for sharing knowledge, ideas, and opinions, for making yourself or someone else feel more comfortable. It's for commiserating. It's for entering into a conversation, a new space, a new topic, a new culture, unfamiliar territory. It is how we begin. We start with something inoffensive. We make polite conversation. We bring up something obvious that we have in common, like the weather. It helps that in New England especially, the forecast is always interesting. And so, little by little, small talk, by slightly bigger talk, we accrue knowledge of the person and they do the same of us, and a relationship emerges. Sometimes I like to think of people as kindergarten art projects. It was always the best part of the day when arts and crafts time rolled around. You had a big piece of paper, a Dixie cup full of glue, and a table piled with stuff. Your sole task was to make something interesting. Grown-ups might call it a collage. You plaster layer after layer of newspaper scraps, magazine cutouts, clothespins, googly eyes, feathers, shells, pennies, macaroni elbows, and anything else of a manageable size for gluing until a something emerges. All of us are kindergartners of a sort, engaged in the ongoing process of making this collage that we call self. And we all do it differently. Some focus on arranging similar objects together, or only using one color of magazine scrap, or turning the shells into a beach or an ocean. Some are a little bit more unorthodox, trying out different kinds of mediums and sticking on found objects. Pocket lint becomes clouds, a bottle cap finds its way into the middle of a macaroni field. I feel like collectively, human ecologists, especially the kind you find at COA, approach this collaging in a distinct way. We eschew norms and embrace the funky. Macaroni bits cascade around our canvas as we question whether we should really be using food products in an art project. We attempt to identify the bird that the feathers came from and think about the legal implications of having it in our possession. We recycle the paper and stick things to ourselves instead. Small talk is how we share little pieces of our collaged selves. Each time we interact with someone, in whatever small, brief, or momentous way, we exchange something. A random fact, a piece of magazine, the compliment, the weather, a dollop of glue, the time of day, a turkey feather, the Red Sox score. Of course, at COA, small talk comes in a certain flavor. It's kind of like nutritional yeast. It's a little bit different because we know each other's names, for the most part, and are aware of what everyone is up to, for the most part. We know that if someone says they're going to the bar, it doesn't necessarily mean they're going to get a drink. We know that the aurora borealis means a chocolate fountain. And when someone talks about week 8, 9, or 10, we know all too well what that implies. We know that talking about the weather with the right people will lead to a conversation in cloud taxonomy, that going to Hannaford with someone could mean talking about conglomerates and cooperatives, and that passing someone on the path at the right time of year could spark a friendly reminder that it's prime garlic mustard season. There is a saying that you can count the number of seeds in an apple, but you can't count the number of apples in a seed. I've always liked this quote for 2 reasons. The first is that it mentions apples, and as some of you may know, I like apples. The second is that it helps put into perspective the unfathomable implications of a small action. Absent-mindedly dropping an apple core in the bushes somewhere could lead to hundreds of thousands of apples with millions of seeds. Having a small talk with a stranger could enrich a perspective, make someone's day, change a life. I will admit, the weather and the Red Sox are probably not the life-changing part. But it doesn't really matter what you talk about. Books, trees, splinters, the best way to slaughter a chicken, the dissolution of the Soviet Union. The topic is irrelevant. It's the act of sharing yourself that is important. I suppose my message to you all is to keep small talking. Be open to spontaneous conversations. Collect and share interesting stories. Talk about the weather. I'm not saying you have to talk to people on airplanes, but remember that it is never too late to build relationships or learn something from a stranger. Bring your Dixie cup full of glue with you wherever you go. Embrace the small. One last thing. The most important thing from COA that I will always carry with me hasn't been grades. It's not even my diploma, which I don't have yet, but I will. It's not the business strategies, the scientific names, or color theory. Rather, it is the small moments that I have shared with many of you. The compliments, the advice, the silent laughter across a room, the knowing looks, and the bewildered ones too. These are the things that I will add to my collage. These are the magazine scraps, smooth rocks, A and B receipts, sea urchin spines, doodled margins of notebooks, and organic, vegan, and gluten-free macaroni that I will stick to myself. Thank you. It is now my honor to introduce my fellow graduate, Kyle Schenk.